ஒரு பிராண்ட், அதாவது சென்னை மக்களுக்கு ரொம்ப ரொம்ப க்ளோஸ் டு ஹார்ட்னு சொல்லக்கூடிய பிராண்ட் ஒன்று சத்யம் சினிமாஸ்.
Let's argue whether the job of business is to make a profit.
One thing was most ideal in Chennai was the popcorn at Satyam. நம்ம விட்டில் தமிழ் பாட்காஸ்ட் ஆரம்பித்ததுக்கான காரணமே தமிழ்நாட்டிலிருந்து வர பிராண்ட்ஸ், தமிழ்நாட்டில் வர பிராண்ட் பில்டர்ஸ் கிட்ட பேசணும். அந்த நமக்கு ஃபேவரட்டான பிராண்ட்ஸ் எல்லாம் எப்படி உருவாச்சு, அது எப்படி பண்ணாங்கன்னு தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்காக தான் அந்த பாட்காஸ்ட்டை ஆரம்பித்தோம். ஒரு பிராண்ட், அதாவது சென்னை மக்களுக்கு ரொம்ப ரொம்ப க்ளோஸ் டு ஹார்ட்னு சொல்லக்கூடிய பிராண்ட் ஒன்று சத்யம் சினிமாஸ். அது இல்லாமல் எப்படி பண்ணுறது? அதனால் ஐ ரீச்ட் அவுட் டு மிஸ்டர் கிரண் ரெட்டி. அவர் சொன்னார், தமிழில் பேசணுமா நல்லா பேசணுமான்னு ஒரு ஆப்ஷன் கொடுத்தாரு. எனக்கு இந்த டீலிங் ரொம்ப பிடிச்சிருந்துச்சு. இங்கிலீஷில் பண்ணலான்னு முடிவு பண்ணோம் இந்த பாட்காஸ்ட்டை. ஸோ without further ado, Mr. Kiran Reddy, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Kiran, when I come from Coimbatore, I moved to Chennai in 2000. With a great twist of fate, I ended up at the New College, and I went more to a compound that is next to New College, which was Sathyam Cinemas, then New College itself. So I'm glad about what happened to Sathyam Cinemas. But even before we get there, can you tell us something about yourself, your family, how you got into the family business? Because people don't know of you at all.
It's probably good that it's that way. Now, I came into a situation where I went to the US to study my master's, and I came back. And my family had financial troubles at that particular point in time. So that building was meant to be broken down and converted into a hotel.
Wow.
Okay, so it was not meant to be there. And it was because of the financial troubles at that point in time that project was stagnant, and the cinema was just the way it was.
Right.
And we went through. It took us a while for us to get out of that. And in the interim, when I came back, I had no place in the regular businesses. I had, maybe I had been indoctrinated in the US with an MBA, being idealistic. So I came back. Didn't felt like I connected with anything else. I had no place.
What was the family business like?
There were, multiple businesses, but really, for me, the thing was I had no place in that. It was either things were stuck or I just didn't felt like I connected.
Okay.
So this was like kind of a thing that I thought, let me spend a little bit of time in this, and there was a power plant that I was working on, which we had a license for, and the financing of that. So these were the two things that I could spend some time on. This was my first consumer experience, and there was very little money that was being made by by the cinema at that point in time. But it was so immaterial to the family that they let me just, do whatever I wanted with that thing. It was probably very, very small, maybe in the region of about maybe even 15-20 lakhs a year. So I would take that amount of money and just say, listen, let me invest it back and put it back in things. It's not material to anybody. So let me just put it back and see what happens. Because the things were some very basic things about, just cleanliness of the toilets. It was a unionized place. It was a place that, was a bit dilapidated. So just a simple act of just seeing if we can do a little bit more. And that's how I got started. I think it must have been probably maybe 3-4 years before I started seeing that as something that I wanted to spend more time. So in the first so many years, it was just something that was there. And then it's a bit of, let's call it play money, that you're basically saying, okay, let's see what happens. I think essentially what happened at that time was the little changes. People who came to the cinema and started noticing the little things. And that was just my first time that I've actually felt, that, you make a difference and you get that feedback, and you're getting that constant feedback loop, that it's making a difference to somebody. And I think it just got me on the treadmill of wanting to make that difference in people's experiences. So that was just the starting point.
Which period was this, the 4 years you mentioned?
Probably came back from my graduation, I'm thinking from 95, 97. So it's probably about 97. Okay. And from then onwards sort of thing.
So would it be right if I said the first?
My memory is really poor. So I'd always just say that, for some period, it's a blur. So remember, it's a long time.
A blur is always a good thing.
Exactly.
In that respect, right? So the first one within Sathyam Cinemas was Shri. Was that the first?
That's true.
Innovation?
That was actually, it was already built as 4 screens at that particular point in time, but there was just an empty box.
Oh.
Okay. And for why? When they built it 25 years ago, at that point, it was built in the 70s. So maybe 20 years ago, that they had that extra box that they never finished. Okay. So it really was just the completion of something that was originally intended at that point in time.
So I see a lot of family businesses, a lot of people start within family businesses say, I got this because my family wanted me to do this. And it looks like you've done what you did because of lack of family interference in the
Look,
business.
I think in so many ways, that's why you tend to think that you do something. You're really placed in an environment where things are. I mean, you're not the master of that. You're actually placed in an environment. At that particular point in time, when I came back with the family being in difficulty, when I came back from the US, my goals were this.
Hmm.
It was if I had $1 million in the bank account, if I had a home and I had a job, given all the financial difficulties of the family, I'd be quite happy with that. So every time I keep thinking back to it and saying that how much more the universe has given me than I've asked for.
Wow.
Okay. And so it's a constant reminder that I'm grateful for everything that's happened, post that. If I didn't have that difficult circumstances that I started with, I might have gone down a different journey. I might have done something different. And
Right.
my entire life was dictated by the circumstances that were at that point in time, which I thought were really difficult. But actually, those difficult circumstances were the starting point for my own journey. So I'm grateful for that too.
That's deeply philosophical and very introspective in what you're saying. But I want to stick to my favorite part of
So,
the conversation. A brand or an institution like Sathyam Cinemas could not have happened without a vision. As much as you're saying it was one box I took and converted, you could convert it into anything. It wasn't just clean. It was a completely different experience.
but just remember, I mean, it's not a vision that even was apparent at that point in time.
Mhm.
So, and I think in most businesses, we tend to look at it in retrospect and start thinking that we had enormous clarity
Right.
when we start something.
Right.
We actually have no clue. Okay. The evolution of a vision also arises over the period. You do things, you get some feedback, so some things you change, some things you correct, and over a period of time, you start getting clearer and clearer about what you want that business to be. But there were some fundamental elements to that. They were undefined. So the vision was still undefined, but there was probably some sense of it. At the underlying thing, if I have to go back, there was a underlying pattern, the desire to create a better experience for somebody else.
Right.
And that's all it is. And maybe that's the constant that still remains in my life. There's a desire to create an experience for other people. That's it.
That's beautiful. I think a lot of businesses are in. So I tell a lot of my clients that whether you're selling a product or a service, remember that you are in the experience business. And I think what you're saying adds up beautifully to that. I get that you might not have had a vision when you started. Did you have any inspiration when you started?
I think a lot of inspiration, but actually not from cinemas.
Okay.
I think simply because I think when you look at your own field, very often it's very limiting and you really have to look outside your field. For me, one of the early inspirations actually came from, there were some cinemas, and I would say that some cinemas, for example, especially in Asia, like for example in Thailand at that point in time, there are a few others that had done a good job. They broke the mold of what was a templated cinema. Like the US went down the route of being a very templated cinema.
Right.
Okay, which is, they're pretty much standardized boxes with a certain pattern. They were not the really lovely days of cinema where you had the cinema palaces. And I think if you go back and see books from the 30s, 40s, 50s, you would see these beautiful buildings similar to like opera houses that were designed where people would go and watch a cinema. And so part of it was there was a desire to create that sort of thing. So it is that magical place where you go to watch a movie, where you go once in a while. The second is you'd see few cinemas that were inspirations, but then you start looking at other businesses. And really, for me, the two inspirations came from, one was retail businesses, like luxury retail and things like that. You really saw how they were trying to create the environment, and how the environment created a desire for you to engage with that brand. And at that point, casinos, because they were, I mean, especially in Vegas, there was the whole period where Vegas was going through its renewal at that point in time. And
Right.
then you had, new casinos come in. There was Bellagio, there was, multiple others that came in at that particular point in time, but each one trying to, create a greater and greater experience and create a really wow experience. So there was a bit of an inspiration from, we used to have a trade show that happened in Vegas. So that itself, it was called, and right now it's called CinemaCon, but it used to be called something else. And so I used to go there annually. So that became an inspiration itself, that, how do they create this really places that change the way you view something? Like, there are, I always think of this, if you do something incrementally, you don't essentially what you do is you make people come back a little more often. Maybe what they do is they change, they stop going to one place and they come to another. So You can gain market share by doing something incremental. But if you want to increase the size of the market, you really have to do something that's fundamentally different. Okay. And really, I think that is a recognition and a realization that I had earlier. If you see even the casino business, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened in Macau. Macau,
Not really.
there used to be just one or two casinos. There used to be licensed. I forget the name of the casino also that used to be there, and the business was about maybe $1.5 billion or something like that.
Mhm.
And so then there was this whole host of casino licenses were given, and people thought, look, the market's just 1.5 billion. Now with so many licenses being given, so many new hotels, will the market collapse? Okay, and it became the fastest growing market. One of the things that taught me that was great supply creates demand. Okay, that we tend to see demand as finite and fixed, but demand is not finite and fixed. Is dictated by great supply. So when you do something that's truly exceptional, you change people's behaviors and habits.
Wow. That's phenomenal. That's, in fact, this goes on to a question I want to ask you a little later on, but I'll ask it now.
Sure.
I see a lot of, given that you said you got inspiration for the theater going experience from casinos and luxury retail, there are a lot of brands in India today, and not just experiential brands, right? Even product FMCG brands where I come from. These brands are inspired from what's there in the West.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of American snacks, the peanut butters, and they're really expensive products. They struggle to find a footing beyond the top 0.1% of the Indian population. How would this work for them? They're creating them, supplying FMCG is a lot easier to create. How would this philosophy of saying supply creating demand, it goes back to also the UAE mantra of saying you build and they will come.
Yes.
Would it apply to
Let me not
other
talk.
brands?
Let me not talk about other brands, but I can tell you how it applied to us.
Sure.
Oh, there was something which again was at that point I thought was a big disadvantage, big liability. The government had capped our ticket prices at 120 rupees for 7 years.
Right.
And for a 7-year period, just imagine that, you can't even increase your ticket prices even with the rate of inflation.
Right.
Off a ticket price of 120 rupees, just remember that the tax rate was probably around 30% of the gross amount. So you're already losing,
I
like
limit
some
your take, and I will also take tax from it.
So it's limited, it's highly taxed, okay, and you end up in a situation where you have only that much income that comes from, from movie tickets.
Right.
So what do? You learn how to do the business without that lever, okay, without operating the price lever. I really think that's what taught me how to do the business. When you're pushed to a corner, you learn that there are other levers that you can actually take. So that's why you learned about, the food business has to be something that's really good, and that has to drive our profitability. We got our advertising in place. So the ancillary businesses and the fundamental we started thinking, if the ticket price cannot be changed, what can we change? We can change occupancy. Okay. And we started focusing on increasing occupancy. One of the ways to increase occupancy is do the best thing that you can, and more people come. It's relatively simple. I mean, it kind of sounds like something that seems okay. Maybe in retrospect, it seems relatively simple. You simply do the best thing that you can, and more people will come.
Wow. So that takes me to the next question I had, as in, even as you were describing it, ticket prices were kept, and you were also based in Chennai, which is known to be, and rightly so, as a very conservative market, not really a market where people spend money on experiences, and they're very frugal on the way they spend. And it's not really the most, I wouldn't say not world aware, but a little less outgoing than a city like a Bombay or a Delhi.
Possibly.
Did that not become a problem?
Actually, it's an advantage. You come to a city where you have limited opportunities, and then if you create some value, that becomes the primary, it stands out. I think part of the, I think we were talking about this earlier, that what made this brand feel like people's own. It was a brand that Chennai had that they could cheer for, they felt like that was their own, because it was a brand that was constantly striving to improve their experience, and it's a brand that they could feel a sense of pride with. So when somebody came from somewhere else, they felt like this is a place that they could show in Chennai. It made it easier that Chennai had fewer places to show at that point in time. So actually, in so many ways, the brand being created that way is not just what we did, but it was also a set of circumstances that presented itself at that point in time. There was a space, Chennai, the people here love movies. There was an opportunity to create something that's really beautiful, and something that really beautiful got people to feel like this was something special about, what Chennai had in possibly over some of the other cities, that made them feel a sense of pride towards, Chennai. The way, for example, the Super Kings in some way has a sense of pride. And that really It just manifested that way, I would say.
It gave a community, the city, which had very little about itself to cheer for, and another reason to cheer for,
I would
cheer
think so.
themselves.
I can't sound so negative about it, but I think Chennai hadn't progressed. I mean, at that point in time, as much as some of its neighboring cities had progressed,
Right,
and so it was always seen as we would get things after other cities would.
right.
Okay, so in some area, it was nice to be ahead of the game, I suppose, in somewhere.
So, if it was so simple, why haven't people replicated it?
No, I think it's simple when you view it. It depends on how you view it. It's so simple when you come from the clarity that the reason that you exist is to serve people. That you don't exist because you want to make money. You exist because you have an opportunity to serve people, and the byproduct is making money. When you seek to make money, it actually becomes a little more evasive than you think it is. So for me, all I cared about, at least in the business, was that I'm able to create a better experience. I think the money came as a byproduct of that.
Okay, I have another question. It'll
Yeah.
be very rude, especially given that this is a Tamil podcast.
If so.
I came from Coimbatore,
Mhm.
and I found the people in Chennai extremely rude. And always, I found as I travel, I saw a similar reaction in Delhi, where people are, and Coimbatore speak really respectful Tamil, right? Whether they're nice to you or not, the language is very polite. In Chennai, I found the language extremely difficult to handle. And the one place where I saw the local boys serve to please was at Sathyam Cinemas. You having a vision, and you having, whether you claim not to have had the vision, but want to do something hygienic and make it clean the best possible is one thing. But getting a team of young boys to behave in line with what you were doing, that's completely different. How did you manage that?
I don't know how I managed it, but I'll tell you that I got lucky with so many things. One, I got lucky with somebody who, now Mona, who now runs Basque over here. I don't know if you've
Right?
been
I
able to
mean,
Basque. I think that's a fun. So she was, I'll have to say that if she ever listens to this, she was not the best head of HR. Okay, because she was not really good at processes, but she was the most amazing person. Okay, and to have somebody like that to head our human resources, okay, meant that there was a company culture where the company truly cared about people, and she was an example of that. As much as sometimes, from my side, there would be a certain behavior towards employees. Mona really was the person who anchored how the organization treated its employees. It's simply a byproduct of that the organization values its customers, the organization values its employees. They treat both of them really well. The byproduct is that the employees treat the customers really.
So the boys at the counter did not have targets to sell for?
None.
Oh,
I don't think there was. See, I actually also I don't believe in targets. I think targets create skewed behavior. We at some point there was some experimentation. We did have, of a little bit of upselling things like that. I was never for that.
Mhm.
Okay, and so I think we pretty much the targets were mostly service oriented targets.
Mhm.
Okay, really about getting people served, and quicker and easier, and make it easier for people rather than focusing them on revenues. Look, first to be clear, how much control do they have on revenue at that particular point in time? Probably less. And to put the pressure on them is, kind of unfair. Second, it creates a certain misalignment. I find that any target, okay, let's put it this way, any metric has unintended consequences.
Could you explain that more?
Okay. So for example, let's assume that I create a metric that somebody's got to increase my profitability.
Okay.
Or let's say increase revenue because I have no ability to increase profitability. So at the ticket counter, so how to increase profitability? Upsell, for example. Sell people more or sell people bigger sizes. So you're encouraging people to buy more than what they need. What ends up happening is that actually you're not serving the customer. You're doing disservice to the customer. Do you think creating disservice to the customer creates a long-term, value for a brand? When the brand is misaligned with their customer, okay, if the brand makes money from something that's not good for the customer, that can't necessarily be good for the brand in the long term. And I think that very often companies put their employees in very difficult situations. So we've never put the company, the employee in a difficult situation with respect to our customer. And a lot of companies do that. They actually put their companies at the front of stupid policies at the back end. So, so effectively the employee has to justify to the customer why the company has something that's really stupid.
Wow. So that they could refuse to abide by a policy?
No, but there would not be a policy that, they wouldn't need to think. Look, for example, is serving a customer quickly, is that a beneficial thing for a customer or not? They would agree it's beneficial.
Right.
Serving a customer politely, would it be beneficial for customer? It'll be not. Selling more to a customer, is it beneficial customer? No, it's questionable.
Right.
So we would not ask them to do something that's questionable.
Wow. I would usually say this kind of a philosophical approach to business is a luxury few can afford.
I don't know about that. And remember that, look, again, what you're getting from me right now is a mix of a part of me now and a part of me then. So who knows which one's what, okay, at that particular point in time. But at the essence, something I got right at that point in time. And I say got right, that this approach was the right approach. The approach that money is simply a byproduct of what you do. The approach that you have to do what's right by you rather than what is profitable to you.
Conscience.
I don't know. At that point, I might have gone with the thing of values, a certain set of values that the organization had, and those values were putting the customer first. Right now, I might go slightly beyond values, but let's not get into that territory. That might be I still tend to think that even values tend to be a stepping stone to something that's beyond values.
Can you go down that path?
Okay, if you really want.
I'd really want to know.
Let's put it this way. Okay, is killing a person a good or bad thing?
Depends.
That's true. So if you had a value that I will not kill somebody, or I would not hurt somebody, is that a value that may not serve you at some point in time? If you're doing that to defend, your family, okay, you're doing that to protect lots of other people, is that something that is something that you would do and should do? So how would you know if a value is right or wrong? It's hard to know in absolute terms. So it is contextual. Now, the problem is, how do you make decisions that are contextual? You cannot make decisions from contextual because we are not conscious enough, because we don't operate from a higher state. It's very difficult to us to make the right decisions contextually. So values tend to act as an intermediate stepping stone. When we're not conscious enough to make the right decision that is appropriate at that point in time. But there's a point in time where you move in a direction where you move towards greater consciousness, that you realize that even values are simply a stepping stone. And you will know at that point in time what the right thing to do is.
Were there any thing you need to correct as you were building Sathyam Cinemas with these values?
Plenty of things. Oh,
at a value level?
No, at a value level, I was kind of an idealist anyway. Okay, I think there was this. When I was a kid, I was an idealist. Somehow, I was becoming a realist, and I've come back to being an idealist. So I'm happy to come back home.
So what was the transition from idealism to realism?
Oh, just the thing that this is the way the world functions and this is the way that we need to. And I think I didn't become too much of a realist, thankfully. Okay, but I became a little more of a realist than I should have, maybe. It was that, like for example, right now in idealist, I can see everyone's lovely. And actually, I feel everyone's lovely. It's actually relatively simple. If you only see the lovely side of people, everyone's lovely. Everyone's got stuff. I've got stuff. I've got baggage. I've got things that are probably not particularly pleasant. But why focus on that? I'm not focusing on my unpleasant stuff. So why not focus on just the pleasant stuff of everyone? And when you see everyone is lovely, they feel a certain way in your presence because you genuinely feel that way.
Lovely. Speaking of idealism, one thing was most ideal in Chennai, was the popcorn at Sathyam. When a brand becomes this close to people, there are rumors about this brand. So there are rumors I've heard, I'm not sure if it's true, that somebody was sent scouting for the best popcorn in the world by Sathyam. And they discovered this popcorn in Canada or the northern part of America. They brought it back, and that's the same popcorn that's available across most cinemas in India. Is that a true story?
There's partly truth to it, but I don't think it's in that way.
Okay.
Look, we did really want to improve our popcorn. And at that point in time, I think most of the popcorn was actually from India. So you didn't have popcorn that was available from abroad. I think our desire was to look for the best. So we did, so in a trade show, for example, we ended up, meeting somebody that we resonated with. And they actually had a really good preferred popcorn. And so we built a relationship with them. And then we started this entire journey. So really, part of it is true that we, went out seeking for really good popcorn, but we found lovely people. And so more than the best popcorn, it was lovely people that we actually had a good business relationship with.
Right.
And maybe it's that energy of lovely people with good popcorn and all of that comes together.
So, operating from this point of abundance and luxury that very few people can afford.
And as I was talking earlier, I think operating from abundance is not a state that comes from absolute resources or wealth. It comes of the state of gratitude. So if you feel abundant, then you feel like you have enough for yourself and you have surplus to give. If you don't feel abundant, you feel scarce. You feel like you don't have enough and you need the world to give you more. Okay? That has got nothing to do with absolute wealth, which is why you will see a person who's extremely rich feeling scarcity and feeling like the world they need to get more. You will see a person who's relatively poor who takes their surplus earnings and able to feed somebody else because they operate from a state of abundance. So how do you build abundance? You build abundance through gratitude. You're grateful for what you already have, not for the things that you want, but for all the things that you already have. A simple tool, for example, that I tell people, if you want to build abundance, take an amount that's not material to you. And let's say for somebody, it's 10,000 rupees, say up to 10,000, but let's say.
Okay.
And you say for an amount of less than 10,000, if you ever encounter a person that you have to negotiate with, let's say a street vendor. Okay, very often when you go to a street vendor, the person will quote something.
Right.
And you'll try to negotiate something because that's the norm. They'll quote 100 or 200 or something, and you'll say, I want it for 150 or whatever that thing is. Why not do the reverse? Negotiate upwards. So, for example, if somebody says 200, why not say, I'll give you 300? The person's going to be confused because the person won't understand what you're trying to do. Okay. We actually have very limited opportunities to negotiate nowadays because half our things are bought on Amazon, things like that, where a fixed price.
Right.
Okay. But the few opportunities that we get, negotiate upwards. Every time we negotiate, we're telling our subconscious we don't have enough. Every time you give, you're telling your subconscious you have enough. It's fine that you're negotiating for something that's really large, something significant, your life depends on it. Perfectly okay, negotiate. But for the number of things that we negotiate, all we're doing is programming our mind to feeling like we don't have enough.
Does this tie back to manifestation? Do you have a take on manifestation at all in business?
Probably some, I'm not sure. What I can say is that in the way that I see manifestation right now is that you set out a desire. It doesn't mean that you set out the desire and it actually happens. You set out the desire and work towards the desire. Okay. And then, so that to me is manifestation. But people tend to think of manifestation as simply that setting the desire out in itself. I think for me, the benefit came that somehow I got aligned to manifesting for the larger good.
I'm going down a path in this conversation which I don't necessarily propagate.
Okay.
Where I face a lot of brands. So I want this clarity from you because we're talking about having larger purpose, right? So a lot of brands that I meet and talking about hardcore marketing and brand building, they say my brand's got a purpose and my brand purpose will guide what I'm doing. The point, I have a contrary point to that, saying assigning a purpose to your brand is almost a shortcut to figuring out what your brand should be, your positioning, your proposition, and everything.
Absolutely.
Some people overplay the purpose angle and saying it's not about the brand purpose, it's about your brand's role in customers' life. How is there a difference between the two, in your opinion?
Yes, I think there's a difference. When people say the brand purpose, they think that the brand is purposeful. Actually, a good brand will serve the customer's needs, and that's all there is. So it's not that it's necessarily purposeful. I think the purpose goes beyond the brand. If you're somebody truly purposeful, it comes from the founder's purpose of why the brand exists. Does the brand exist to serve the founder's needs, or the brand exists for the founder to contribute to society? If a brand exists to serve the founder's needs, it cannot be a purposeful brand. I used to think, and maybe I'll rephrase it this way. I used to think there are businesses that are impactful and not. Okay, there are certain impact businesses, certain businesses are not impactful. Now I've changed my perspective on that. There are founders that are impactful or not. The businesses are simply tools for that. So any business can be an impact business. Any business that's perceived to be an impact business may not be an impact business because, let's say, even a non-profit may actually be serving the founder's ego. And then it's not an impact business because everybody is then simply a tool to serve their pride and ego. How can you be impactful that way? You might have a business, for example, that may not seem like an impact business. So, for example, you take an alcohol business, may not seem like an impact business. But if you had an impactful founder behind that, then he'll say, listen, the reason for me serving alcohol is for people to celebrate. I will not serve alcohol for people to get drunk. That's not my desire. So all their efforts will be in, let me focus on in where people use alcohol for the right reason and not use alcohol for the wrong reason. So they can bring that impact perspective even into businesses that you don't think are normally impactful. So I've stopped thinking of the right and wrong businesses or impactful. I used to think like that certain businesses were impact businesses are impact. Now I'm thinking it's the intent that you bring to that business that makes it impactful or not. And most businesses are coming from a place of lack for the individual. That I lack something. I lack success. I lack a sense of achievement. I lack money. I lack all of that. And my business has to get the world to give it to me in some form. What happens if you feel exactly the opposite? I feel fully secure. I don't need my self-worth to be, enhanced in any way because I'm secure. I feel abundant. I don't need that much more money. Okay. And then what do you end up with? Will you end up doing nothing? No. But you come from that state, and then the business becomes simply a way to contribute. So think of it this way. Very often people go in this route that society serves their company that serves their personal need. For most business, that's all it is. Your customers are simply a tool for your company to profit from, and the company is simply a tool for you to benefit, whether monetarily, societally, and socially, whatever it is.
Right.
What happens if you invert it? That the company is, that you contribute through your company to society. That that the society, your contribution to society happens through your company. So you see, you serving your company that serves society.
Just to make it clear for the listeners and viewers, you're not talking about social services.
Doesn't have to be social service. Take any business and start thinking yourself as, can I be of service to my company, and that can my company be of service to society? Whatever you're doing marketing. Can you be of service to the other people? Will some of your needs not be met by the thing when you're of service? Of course, your needs will be met. But it's a question of which one do you put first.
This again pushes me to something you mentioned earlier. We're pushing for that 1% more profit, 1% more growth. I'm not sure if you read Atomic Habits.
Yes.
The 1% adds up, right? And the job of businesses is to make profit. How is it right for a business owner to not focus on that 1%?
Let's argue with the job of businesses to make a profit.
Okay, then. Okay, why should a business exist otherwise?
To serve society. It has a product or service through which it's serving the needs of its customers. To do it sustainably makes sense. I'm not suggesting that you do it unsustainably.
Right.
Okay. Profit is a sustainable way of saying, what's the advantage of having profit? You can serve more people.
You're sounding like Dhoni, who focuses on the process than the result of a match.
I don't know, but but I would say there's more joy in the process than the result of the thing. Because let's look at results. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Right.
So which means, are you going to go up and down in your emotion? But if you enjoy playing the match, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. You've had a great time.
Given we've come back to a Dhoni CSK reference, I've seen people who say Indian consumers in general are value conscious. They will not spend too much money. I differ with that opinion. I think every consumer is value conscious, not necessarily price conscious, as people mean to imply. Very rarely have I seen a brand change the customer's behavior, as in involuntarily. For example, we are not the cleanest of community. We make a mess in general. We kind of make a mess and we almost take pride in having a good time and messing places up. For the first time, I saw people clean up where they were seated at Sathyam Cinemas. They weren't incentivized to do it, but they had a feeling that it was their duty to keep the place clean. And we still haven't got it even at the higher end of the society, if I can say. How does that happen?
So one of the initiatives that he had, just actually probably maybe even 6-8 months before we sold the business, was really to start thinking of the cinema as a platform for impact of some sort. Now we know that, so just to think of it, the cinema had a large number of viewers coming through the cinema. So in terms of absolute numbers, maybe the railway station and stuff like that would have been probably higher, or the bus stations would have probably been higher, but we had a large number of people coming through. So all we said was, can we create small nudges? small ways in which people can think. So, for example, our movies always start on time. Never get things. There's exactly a time and it'll start on that time, which means the show starts at that particular time. See, very often what happened was most of the places, the ad
That
started at
started that time.
okay. We've decided that this thing, for some reason, we decided that the show started there, but we never delayed it. I mean, unless there was some emergency or there was a particular situation that created a whole jam. But, so there was this thing of you come on time, otherwise you miss it. Nobody's, things are not delayed, things are things. So that means that just the perception of something starting on time. What does that do? It creates a habit of, coming for things on time. Okay. Certain things that we would, like for example, that you would clean up after the thing. So we encourage people to clean up. You would have a certain set of breathing. You would actually put a certain set of nudges on screen. Saying that requesting things. And slowly, once you see 2-3 people doing it, that slowly becomes contagious. Over a period of time, you see more and more people. What we are hoping for is a small nudge, some small start, somebody else noticing the same thing. Okay, and the second is we kept our environments clean.
Right.
And to keep toilets really clean, we put an enormous amount of effort in trying to keep, toilets clean. Simply because that's a place they would have expected it not to be clean. When you put in that effort, you start seeing that people respond to the effort. They've responded in different ways. People come there, dress up and come. When the environment is really beautiful, people like to also dress up and come to that environment because then somehow they feel like, coming to this environment. For a lot of people in the middle class, maybe this was something special, or
Right.
lower middle class, this was something special.
They
So
feel more
dress-
like they belong in the
exactly.
environment.
Yes, exactly. But what was really beautiful, and I think I have to give credit to Chennai, that's a place which was inclusive for everyone. Okay, the price was the same. It was affordable. So somebody really wealthy, somebody not so wealthy could be sitting right next to each other.
Right.
And somehow we didn't find any disadvantage with that. And people felt very comfortable with that. So I think there was something lovely about that business that it became so inclusive.
You can feel free not to answer this question, but I want to ask you this. I've seen the amount of people cleaning up after a movie when they go to Sathyam Cinemas. From the time it's become PVR, I don't see as many people cleaning up.
I really don't know. I haven't gone much to the movies after that. So really don't know. So there's nothing that I can comment on something that I don't know.
Good. You spoke about abundance and giving. Now, I'm a marketing guy, right? We go from growth. We see a business that's growing. It might not be profitable today. In fact, profits almost become a bad word for a lot of investors. It's
Not
changing-
anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. It's changing this year.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of businesses just going after growth. What has a business been like you? How does a business been like you approach this kind of
I don't know.
business
I'm
environment?
just more a traditional businesses, a business person. So I don't know. I don't resonate with that way of doing things. It's not my way. I
You're
mean,
talking
good
about
luck to them.
The no profit
Which
business
is
or the growth.
which is simply, spending money to grow and then hoping somehow the business is going to convert into profitability. The challenge with that is simply this. Even if you thought that was a sensible business strategy, which is, you underprice something, use price as a way or marketing as a way to build your business. And then at some point of time, you get the volume that, makes it profitable by itself, or that at that point in time, it becomes sticky enough that you can cut down the thing or increase the price. Okay. At which point, then it becomes profitable. I don't know how much has played out in businesses. I
Right.
don't know if I have to go back over the past 10 years and say how many businesses have truly been able to make the switch. Okay. Personally, I think the switch is also hard because one, you got your customers used to how they engage with your brand. But the second is also you have a culture that has not been a profit culture. And try to pivot a culture back to one thing or the other. I've had enormous challenges creating a culture. So I don't know. You probably have a better sense of how many brands have actually transitioned and moved and become profitable.
I can hardly think of any.
So my challenge is that a reasonable strategy to play? I don't know. But also I have this thought process on strategy. I don't think there's really the right or wrong strategy. The question really comes down to, is this the right strategy for you given your context? Okay, I could not operate with that strategy.
No, I think there are some businesses that are well placed, like you said, to operate that way. Because Amazon India doesn't make money. So I managed Oreo for a while. And Oreo I think at that time, it was a 300 crore business. My marketing budget was 120 crores.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we weren't making money at that time. A company like Mondelez, who had the money to put behind it, yes. But the profitability was that you were getting people used to a certain price point. You were not spending that money to discount what you were selling
Hmm.
and then tell people, now you have to pay more because I
more.
want money.
Yeah.
You are using it for different things in the business, but the consumer interaction remain the constant. The pricing to the customer remain the same. I think that's what you're saying. You can't even shift the customer suddenly to say, now I want to make money, pay me more.
So let me talk about marketing a little bit, and I'll get a different perspective on this from you. Let's say you're a really great product or service.
Okay.
Do you need any marketing?
I have a very, very strong point of view on this.
Okay. So the point is this: if something is exceptional, which meets an unmet need, okay, people will queue up for that. The challenge comes when you have a product that there are other products that are meeting the need and you're incrementally better. So for me, I always think a product that needs marketing is something that's only incrementally better, or probably not better, or incrementally better. Products that don't need marketing are things which are phenomenally better. OpenAI, okay, when they launched ChatGPT, had zero marketing.
Right. Most
Yeah.
fastest adopted
Okay,
technology. in the
Tesla
world.
had no marketing. Okay, the iPhone needs no marketing. Okay. I don't know why they do some marketing just to probably please some partners in between. It needs no marketing.
I have a slightly different view. I don't disagree with what he's saying to most parts. So one of my marketing bosses told me the only thing more common than talented people who fail is great products that never met the customer. Because
There are two aspects to marketing. One is information, which is look, is the customer aware of the product or service? Okay,
right.
and that is true. There is awareness, there is a role to awareness, there's a value to awareness in a cluttered environment. That how does the right product or service reach the right customer? There is a need for that. I think we have a system which is broken, which is the advertising system is broken completely.
Tell me about that, please.
Okay. So let's reimagine advertising system. So today, what happens to advertising is somebody desires to sell me a product or service that I have no need for or no want for, but they have a need to sell me a product or service, so they're attempting to do that. Yes, they're trying to optimize to see what is the probability of me buying it versus the cost of them putting their ad in.
Right.
Okay. So it's about everyone trying to grab from it. Okay. Are trying to catch my attention, waste my time. 95% of advertising wastes my attention. Okay?
Right.
Because they're not relevant for me.
Yeah.
When does advertising get really good? When it is a product or service that I need and it is actually right timed and is giving me information of something. Let's assume I'm thinking of buying a car. At that point of time, the relevant car group was advertising to me, that would be relevant. So one, the timing is right. Second is the right categories of cars that I would have looked at. Those advertisements have value to me because at that point in time, they're actually informing me of something. Everything else is going to be completely irrelevant. So which means that most of advertising is wasted. And not only that's the smaller part of the problem, which is the money being wasted. Most of people's attention is being wasted. That is a societal problem that we have. Already it's hard for us to be focused on something. And today we have an enormous amount of distractions. And what is advertising attempting to do is grab some more of your attention. So it takes your attention away. What does an email blast do? Grab attention. One of the things that I tell even my companies is, you don't send an email out unless you're certain that you're adding value in the email. If you send an email when you're not adding value to that person, you're doing disservice to their attention. Okay, so we are irresponsible marketers.
Would you say advertising is a productivity killer?
It's a killer for society itself. Look, what you want society to be is far more present. You don't want them to be distracted. If a person's sitting with their family, you want them to be present with their family. You want them to enjoy time with the family. We are a society that's getting distracted, and we're having more and more tools to continue to distract us. Now, we want companies to work in a manner that they're responsible with their distraction. They're not irresponsible with the distraction.
What about this thing, not just thinking, this point that when I show you an ad of my car, you might not be in the market to buy a car, but I'm building memory structures for you to think of my brand when you decide to buy a car.
Yes.
How wrong is that?
The desire is not coming from fitting my need. Your desire is coming from you having to sell your car. A great sale. I actually think a great salesperson. Okay, there's this author. He's written a book called Selling with Love. Jason Mark Campbell. Okay, we had him down for a workshop over here. So he talks about that. When is a good sale a good sale? When the client or the product requires that. See, say you have a product or service that you need, and if I know that that actually adds value in your life, then the act of selling that product or service to you is an act of service because you need it.
Right.
And I know that that's the best thing for you. Okay. Say, for example, you need a medicine. Okay. In order for you to fix your problem, is it a responsible thing for me to do to sell you to have that medicine if I know that that medicine is the right thing for you? That's a responsible sale. An irresponsible sale is, I have a medicine to sell. Whether you need it or not is not relevant for me. I have a need to sell this medicine. Now I am trying to sell you the medicine not because you need it, it's because I need it.
Then how do I get people to know what I've got for them?
First, it's your responsibility is to know whether the client needs your product or service. So you try to at least start with the intent of saying, this is how I desire to run my company. I desire to run my company where my products and services are going to be sold to people for whom I'm meeting their needs. And I'm not, a corollary to that is you got to be willing to let go of business that there is a wrong sale. The ability to say no to your own business is one of the prerequisites for that. When you come from a place of abundance, you'll say, listen, it doesn't matter. I don't have to have all my customers. There was this lovely episode that I've had. Okay. In the US, there's a department store called Nordstrom.
Right.
Okay. So me and my wife went to Nordstrom. She was looking for something. She it wasn't in the size. You know what the Nordstrom, the customer service agent did? He checked with the other Nordstrom in the city, but then checked with the competitor stores, found the size in another competitor store, asked them to hold it, okay, and then send us there.
That's sweet.
What makes you think that I will not go back to a Nordstrom? What have they done? Have they lost a client or they gained a client? They could have sold something else. They could have said, yo, we don't have this. Why don't you try buying something else? But they never did.
They've gained a customer for life.
And that's my point. How easy is it to create customers for life? All you need to do is build trust. In simple words, in some way, marketing is simply, again, another proxy for creating a demand. Okay. But the way companies market creates distrust. It does not create trust.
Give me an example of that.
Because they create distrust because it comes across, the company's neediness comes across. Okay. I'll get into a couple of examples.
Please.
Okay. One example is, we've talked about this, the other day itself, that with my product or service, that somehow some version of you is being enhanced. So basically what you're saying is that somehow you're deficient without my product or service. And with the addition of my product or service, you will be the super version of yourself. And somehow now you're far more valuable or you're more desirable or some version of that. So you'll see that with jewelry brands that somehow the bride somehow gets enhanced, okay, with their jewelry, and suddenly, they had a wonderful marriage. And somehow, what is the subtle shift that without the jewelry, you're not as beautiful and things like that? What does that communicate in some way? It clearly communicates, where is that need coming from? Is that need coming from the true desire to serve the customer? It's coming from a true desire to serve themselves. Most of marketing works on the lack, that you are not good enough, and with this product and service, somehow you will be this better version of yourself. How about marketing saying that you're already wonderful the way you are? I would love to see a jewelry brand say, you're already beautiful. You don't need any jewelry to make you any more beautiful. But just in case you love jewelry, we have this lovely jewelry that you can happily wear.
I thought about this when you said this the last time we spoke, and this is knocking the core of marketing insights.
Because you sell fear, you sell anxiety, you sell insecurity. That is the core of human thing. Why does bad news sell? Bad news sells because bad news gets attention.
Let me play the devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Let's say I am the marketer.
Yes.
Not just let's say I am the marketer. I'm going after an insight, a life truth that you have. I'm trying to tell you that my product can fulfill that. Now, I'm not creating the deficiency.
The question is, do you really believe you can fulfill that? And that's the question. A person with the right intent will only do so when they genuinely believe they can fulfill that. The person with the not so good intent will do so even when they know they may not be able to fulfill that, but that's a great story to tell. It is not that the act of fulfilling a need is a problem. It is your intent behind that act of fulfilling the need. Are you doing it because you want to serve yourself? Are you doing it because you want to serve, somebody else?
Let me do it with an example.
Okay.
Of Nike.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, Nike shoes are for the regular person. I'm not talking about the top athletes. The regular person who's a runner at best, walks in the morning, goes for a jog. A Nike versus a Puma versus an Adidas will not make a difference.
Certainly.
But by using a Nike, they feel more like an athlete. They just feel better. The brand is giving them a sense of confidence, giving them sense of self-worth increases while using a specific brand.
How unfortunate, isn't it? How
Is it?
unfortunate that we need to have our self-worth is dependent on the products and services that we have, with us. How unfortunate that our self-worth is linked to our possessions.
Isn't that a sense of empowerment?
So if it goes away, what happens?
It says you...
No, let's assume your Nike shoes you had got damaged. Now suddenly your self-worth drops along with that thing.
I had another pair of Nike shoes.
Which one? So is your self-worth dependent on a pair of Nike shoes that you wear? Is that how we want our society to feel secure? That they need the Nike shoes or the Gucci bags or something else to feel secure?
I'm going to probe a little more. We just spoke about how when women come to Sathyam Cinemas, they kind of dress up because they feel good about themselves, right? So if a Nike, maybe self-worth was too strong a word.
Unfortunately, at a core, it's simply that we all have a deficiency of self-worth. Humanity in general has a deficiency of self-worth, and we're trying to get things to fill our self-worth. Unfortunately, the direction of filling our self-worth is actually an inward direction, but we're looking externally to fill the self-worth. We're looking for validation, we're looking for praise, we're looking for others' acknowledgement, we're looking for everything, achievement, we're looking for success. We're looking outside for something that cannot be filled from outside.
That goes beyond brands. That goes into
fundamentally
people.
And that's why we're going down the wrong direction. We're seeking a solution for something that the solution is not in that direction. It's in another direction.
Right.
Like the same thing about happiness. One of the biggest problems that we face is that we have this approach to happiness. If we accomplish something, if we buy something, if we are able to get something, we will be happy. That's the equation that we have in our mind. But what actually happens? Any accomplishment that you've had, how long has that happiness sustained? So the point is what? You go back, then it becomes another desire and another desire. So you're actually going through this fleeting sense, the sense that this happiness is very fleeting. It comes for a brief moment, then it goes away, and then you're going back on another thing. So which means that your life is generally unhappy, some periods of happiness based on, some sense of achievement that you have at that particular point in time. Is that a way to live life?
Because this reminds me of, even my own story, right? So when I was working at Cadbury, I got the opportunity to go to the UK, work with Reckitt. I thought that as have a global mandate. So that was the best.
Sounds wonderful, no?
Yeah, sounds wonderful. UK, global mandate, you get access to so many markets. And I went there and everybody was only talking about India. One, hated the lifestyle there. It was amongst the lowest points in my career for me because I was stuck in a place I was so unhappy. I decided to come back. And so the whole point is to say, when you think you're at a high point, you aren't, because what follows is inevitably only downhill from there. And when you think at your lowest point, also you aren't, because your story of starting in the middle of a family crisis to create this brand of Sathyam Cinemas.
But I wouldn't have known it at that point in time. In retrospect, I can tell you that. So essentially, it means that we are, as a society, as humanity, we are looking externally for something that we're actually looking for internally. That journey should be an internal journey, which is what, our own, our own spiritual traditions have taught us. Unfortunately, we move towards replicating what the West the way the West has been looking for it, which is very external.
I get what you say.
Now, if you consume from that place, your consumption is very different. So what happens to a consumer like me? Do I like the fine things? I do. But do I feel like my self-worth is dependent on? No. Do I feel I need to keep on accumulating? No. I feel like what I want, I'll have. And what I don't want, I'll dispose. I don't need. I find joy in the little things. I might find joy in some big things. But it is not because I need validation from somebody else, not because that makes me feel something better about myself.
Wow. A brand can give you joy if it means to give you joy.
Yes. Because look, people have created lots of beautiful things. Somebody's wearing beautiful clothes. That's lovely. We like living around beautiful things. We like living around things that work really well. I love my phone because it can do some really lovely things. It makes my life a lot more convenient. That's a lovely thing to do. But you stop buying things or owning things because it gives you a sense of pride. It gives you a sense of self-worth. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. It gives you validation. Other people think something of you.
I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
Kiran, you mentioned the purpose of the business to serve, and you have your team of people who are there to take care of the moviegoers, your guests rather. Now, how would this extend, or how did it extend to the ancillary businesses? For example, people who are advertising with Sathyam. How is the approach then, or how should it be?
I think the approach of what it was maybe have been different from what I would do today.
Okay.
What it was at that point in time was, well, look, it was a source of business. It was from a pure practical standpoint, it enabled us to be more profitable and as a result, do more for the customers. So we looked at it as simply as a source of revenue and profitability. Today, I'll view it slightly differently. One, that I feel like people are coming for entertainment and ads can be quite boring. Okay. So it actually distracts from entertainment. So what I would expect my clients to do, or the advertising clients, is to make their ads really entertaining.
So it filter the ads that
Or nudge or encourage them, or maybe they're short filmmakers, or there are other people that we can introduce and put them in touch with and say, listen, just try to create different ads for this thing, but the thing is, each one should be like a short film, and they should be truly entertaining. The second aspect is, can you nudge them to operate from the right thought process? So certain sort of things that we talked about, for example, that don't make people feel like they're that they're not good enough, and then you're bridging the gap by your product or service. Make people feel wonderful. Okay, so start with and say, listen, that you're really lovely, but there are times that we simply want to enjoy something, and you do that. So maybe there are two parts. Now, as the second part, I'm not sure I'll be able to nudge people on a constant basis, but the first part, at least, I would have started moving people in that direction. The second part, naturally, if I had a choice between if I had an abundance of ads, I wish I could be in a situation where I can pick and choose the companies that I can that advertise. Saying that, listen, I have only 10 slots. There are 20 ads that I have. I will pick the 10 companies that serve society more than that. I wouldn't auction my price and say, listen, so I'll increase my price. I'll keep the price fixed, but pick the 10 that actually create more value for society then.
So you'd use the shortage of supply, which is time, to actually do better value.
I wish I have an infinite number of clients so that I can pick the few that matter to me.
But an ad's purpose is not to entertain, right? That's what the movie is for.
The movie's purpose is entertain, but how lovely would it be for an ad's purpose to entertain? Is an entertaining ad more likely to be remembered by somebody anywhere?
Stickability is high.
Exactly. So it's also a more effective ad. Look, I think there are two techniques, and I think you probably know this better. I'm just going to say that. One technique is repetition. You keep repeating an ad to the point that there is some memory etched in the thing.
Right.
The second is make it exceptional so that it sticks in your memory. Have a boring ad, tie you into a chair, and then keep repeating it till the point that you can't forget it. Is one technique. Okay. And I'm thinking that sometimes when I watch cricket, I kind of feel like that's the technique I'm stuck in. Those ads are terrible. And unfortunately, I watch it on my mobile device right now, so I have no way of getting out of that ad. I thought I paid for a premium thing, and I thought it's going to be ad-free, and somehow I was mistaken. The cricket's not ad-free, something else is ad-free. Okay. So anyway, and so now I realize that I'm stuck with those ads. Those ads are terrible. And the same ad keeps repeating over after over, and it's just, so I'm trying to, find other ways, but it's just, they're not ads that entertain me at all. So they're just counting on sheer repetition for it to sit in memory. I don't know how I made myself this way. I made myself immune to advertising. I have not bought a single product because of advertising.
As in ever?
Unless I seek it. I seek the advertisement. I'll tell you where. In certain magazines, for example, advertisement becomes a service. If you take a car magazine with car ads, if I want to buy a car and I'm looking at a car magazine with car ads, in that particular context and relevance, a car ad actually serves as informative also. It tells me about what model is available and tells me about some virtues of that model. Okay, so there it is informative. That ad is actually beneficial. And I think, from the Google days, I've just conditioned myself to just blank out everything that the world throws.
You're the worst customer that I could sell to.
Absolutely. I think the world has wasted so much money on advertising on me. If they could stop advertising, they would save the money and save me also.
I mean, going back to marketing fundamentals here, right? I hate the word funnel, which has been over-abused today. So I'll start with memory structure we spoke of. So there's communication that I do to you to build memory structure, to introduce myself, to create awareness. Then I want to create a little bit of interest in me. So I may never buy an electric car. I know there are certain electric cars. Tata is doing great on electric cars. So I know there are brands in Tata. We've got certain features. I've got that. So if and when I decide to buy an electric car, Tata would pop to my mind first. So that is a result of advertising, right?
What does a brand stand for? In some way, a brand stands for a proxy on certain set of values. One of the values is usually quality. In a situation where there is a lack of objectivity, okay, then what ends up happening is that a brand fills that role of filling up the gap in objectivity by saying that, listen, for example, if I'm unaware of the product category, what will I do? I will pick a brand because the brand is a proxy for some benefits. Because what you have the ability to evaluate. When you have the ability to evaluate, you're not brand dependent. I'll put it another way. The brands are for the less intelligent. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
And those who can evaluate make their choices that are independent of brands. This
Right.
brand stands for multiple things and the combined things. Some things are true, some things are not.
Right.
Okay. Is BMW the ultimate driving machine?
I don't think so.
Could one of its cars be? Maybe.
Yeah.
But today I cannot. That brand promise doesn't hold true. There could be so many different cars. If I have the ability to drive multiple cars and evaluate which car resonates, to my enjoyment, driving enjoyment, I should buy that car. Why would I buy BMW on the basis of a promise that it may or may not be right?
I have a recent example of mine. So I also have become immune to ads unless I'm working on a category which is prevalent for that. So if I'm working on, say, fencing poles, everywhere I go, I will see fencing poles.
Oh yeah.
So
but actually that's the way the mind operates. And I used to stay on ACR, and then I used to commute during the COVID period. One day I noticed there was a dental spa, and from that day onwards, I noticed there were 50 dental spas. Till then, I had not seen any sign of a dental spa. I guess that's the way our mind is programmed. That whatever you give attention to, you see everywhere.
Right. There was a pen show in Chennai a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And I was in town and visited the pen show. I like stationery. I like using nice pens to write. And there was this brand from Calcutta. So there were pens for about $1.5 lakh, 5 lakh rupees, and 35,000 rupee pens. But this one ink brand, one table, I wouldn't even call it a stall, just a table, had the maximum traffic there. Because this man who was selling, he was the owner of the company called Suleka Inks. And they they had ink colors which I wouldn't even dream of writing. There was orange and brown, purple. I don't know who writes with these colors.
Yeah.
And then I heard him talk. He started speaking and he said he did said my inks are waterproof and all that. And then he came down to say, my colors are not the regular colors. I create my colors based on inspirations. So he had a color said, this is a dedication to Mother Teresa. He had an ink color named Ma. It was a grayish, a very faded blue. Said this is the color of her scarf because she had limited scarf. She'd washed them repeatedly and it had faded. That's the color of this ink.
Interesting.
He had a color saying this was Bangladesh. It was created for the Prime Minister of Bangladesh as a special edition for their 50th or 75th Independence Day. He said it was called something. Then he had a Jamini Ray collection because this Jamini Ray is a painter, artist.
Okay.
Whose paintings have been declared national treasures. They can only be sold within the country. They can never be sold outside. And he's licensed from the family certain shades from the painting. Something as trivial as ink had a story behind it. I didn't go there.
So he was passionate about that thing.
Yeah, and I didn't go there to buy ink. I ended up buying 3 bottles of ink from him for different colors. I would probably never write with. Is that a good or bad thing? Because that is.
No, I think that's a lovely way thing. When people are passionate and they create products out of passion, you feel an inclination to connect with them in some form or the other. It's not always about buying. It's about experiencing their thing. And some way we take back their experiences through the products or services.
That wouldn't boil down to self-worth then?
Which one? You're not doing it are you doing it to showcase? I mean, it depends on why you do it. If you do it, for example, to boast to your friends about, I got this and this is a wonderful story and I need to show that I have more than somebody else, then it's coming from that place. But if you're actually, you can, again, even the act of sharing something, I want to share it because I want you to experience what I've experienced. That's a very beautiful reason to share. I want to share something because I feel like I'm superior to you because I have that is not a great reason to, to share that. I don't think that was this case in your case.
How is this different from wearing a Nike shoe to go jogging?
You like a Nike shoe, wear it. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you feel that a Nike shoe somehow enhances your self-worth and makes you superior to somebody else, okay, then that is a problem. No, it's not that you don't use branded products. These 2 products are branded. Okay. I just find this brand just comfortable. It works for me and I have no reason to change the brand.
So getting back to brands and passion.
Yeah.
As much as you say there was no vision behind building Sathyam Cinemas, there is a sense of identity that gets built, which you are associated with, something you've created. A lot of founders say, my brand is my baby. Senior founders struggle to retire because they're just so attached to the brand they created, which has become their identity. How did you sell and why did you sell Sathyam Cinemas? I'm sure, I've heard the story.
No, why I sold it was very different. I think there's a point in time where a company could be going down a trajectory that's different. What's right for the company can be different from what's right for you personally. I think the company had enormous ability to expand.
Mhm.
But that expansion, because of its quick pace of expansion, required us to take on more debt or get an external investor. Both of which I was not particularly comfortable with the person that I was, because I was a person that led life on my own terms in some way.
Right.
So there was what's right for the company was it needed to grow. Okay, there was an opportunity to grow, it needed to grow, it needed to serve more people. What's right for me is that that's not the journey that I wanted to go down. So that's a natural point in which it means that, the best thing is to separate, because the growth of both people, the company should grow independently and I should be growing. If you think of it, part of the problem is identity. That we actually, the core of a lot of problems is our identity. What is identity? This, some construct of what we think we are. Okay, so basically we have maybe so many different ways. Even our name is identity in some form. The achievements are an identity. Where we come from is identity. The school that we go to is identity. And unfortunately in the West, that has gotten reinforced as a way of self-worth, that you have to hold on to your identity, that your identity is even a concept of a nation. Okay, that can be controversial. For example, that, being an Indian is an identity. What I've come to realize is that every identity is a liability. See, the problem is what an identity does. If I'm an Indian, then I'm not a global citizen. By definition, the identity has separated me from others. If I'm a human being, I'm not part of the entire animal kingdom. It has separated me from things. So it separated me from my dog. That means I am different from my dog. So we've all created separations based on identity. Okay, both individual and collective identities. So I've realized that every other identity is coming from the egoic need for us to hold on to that identity, and simply that none of the identities really truly matter, and they come in the way of your spiritual journey.
You had no problem letting go of the brand that was built.
By then I'd grown to the point that I had no problem letting go of the brand. I have no problem letting go of a lot of things.
Right.
Because look, just to think of it again, is that your own? The problem comes is when you think that you have created it and it is your own. That institution will continue to exist in some form or one way or the other, independent of me. It is neither mine that I created. Okay, so not mine. It's something that has been there. It's not mine to hold on to anyway. You're never the person that created it. You're simply the person that has been part of that journey for a certain point in time.
You're never owning it, you're just holding it.
Anyway, but part of my thing is about letting go of identities. If there's somebody who really knows me, would know, not many people know that, is that my entire journey is about letting go of these identities.
Okay, let me turn it towards the individual. So once you let go of, what is it that you do without Sathyam Cinema or outside after Sathyam Cinemas was sold? What do you do now?
It's been a few years. I have a couple of businesses, so really, right at this moment, I moved away from deciding what I need to do to whatever comes my way, and whatever is meant to be, it'll happen.
How? I must asking this question at the beginning. So when you mentioned, when you went on this theater journey, you got feedback from people. A lot of entrepreneurs today either live in echo chambers, thinking they know what customers want, or even when they want actual feedback from customers, they struggle to get it. How did you get feedback?
It was far more direct. People would come and tell me that, oh, this was wonderful, this was thing. Actually, I didn't get so much negative feedback. I think the expectation was so low. The cinemas were so bad at that point in time that, anything that you did, you got positive feedback. No, for me, look, the positive feedback at that point, and today maybe it's slightly different. The stage in life that I am, I probably don't need the same level of thing, was validation at that point. For a young person at that point in time, just getting the validation that you're able to add value to somebody's life. Okay. And so that feedback kept coming. But that feedback was not necessarily from a point of I was actually course correcting and stuff like that. The feedback was more of, are people enjoying something? Let me give more of it. Let me try more of it. And a lot of those things were not coming necessarily from the customer. I really truly believe in what, Steve Jobs said. Okay, that you really, I don't know, I paraphrase it in some way, that your customers don't know what they want. Let's put it this way. Simply a projection of your past experiences.
Right.
Okay, which means that you can't desire something that you simply are unaware of. So if you have something, if you're going to try to create something that's a new category of some sort, you can't ask your customers and get that thing. But at a fundamental level, the desires are all uniformly the same. At a superficial level, the desires are different. But when we go down to a fundamental level, everyone's desires, everyone has really common desires. Everyone has desires to have greater, better experiences. Everyone has a desire to have, for example, to feel security, to feel abundant, to feel joy, to feel happiness. Those are fundamental desires. I think any brand that's operating at a fundamental desire level will continue to add value to people. Let me talk about this, okay? This might be another way to look at it. So right now I think about experiences in actually 5 dimensions. The first dimension of experience is pain, okay, which is if you have a certain expectation of any product, service, brand, or whatever it is, and you don't deliver to that expectation. Somebody serves you coffee and it's cold.
Right.
You had an expectation that the coffee will be hot, and you get cold, coffee that's not hot. Okay, there's dissatisfaction from your expected state. That I'm calling it pain.
Okay.
That's the first level of things that you need to fix in an experience journey. The first level you need to fix is get rid of pain. That means whatever you've promised and expect, you deliver to that extent.
Right.
Level 2 is convenience. Convenience is what? You make it easier to, okay? You make something easier. This handle is about convenience. So today, a lot of the economy is driven by convenience. All we're trying to do is make it easier for people to live their lives in some form or the other. The difference between pain and convenience is pain is when you fall short of an expectation. Convenience is you've had an expectation. Now you have done better than the expectation in some form or the other. Level 3 is emotion. Emotion is while you're engaging with that product or service, do you feel a sense of emotion at that particular moment? It can be, there's beauty. You look at a product that's beautifully designed and there's a sense of beauty. There's something else that you feel internally. Right. So that's momentary for that moment. Level 4 is about memories. What product, services, or experiences leave memories for you, where you remember that long after you've engaged with that. Okay. So are you able to take your product or service to that extent where you've left some lasting, recollection of that? Level 5 is transformation. What product, service, or experience has changed who you've become to a better version of yourself? Change may not be instant, but has it nudged and has it supported that transformation to becoming a better version of us? Then there is the spiritual side, which I will stop here, but there is the spiritual side to it, which is a level 6 and a level 7. But a level 6 would be transcendence. I mean, transcendence is simply at that particular moment, do you forget yourself and you feel one with, with the universe in some form or the other? And a sustained state of transcendence is enlightenment.
Wow.
So the question is, what is your product, service, or experience doing to take people on that journey? And at how many levels are you operating?
I'm going to use this. Where did you pick this up from? I'm just curious.
Don't pick it up from anywhere, but it's a combination of thoughts.
I use the Fab Ladder, which is a feature, attributes, and benefits. This is something I'm going to see if I can do that with the brands I work on, because what you're saying is quite transformational.
What I'm saying is the very purpose that we exist is to move towards transcendence. And the very purpose that we exist in our businesses is to support people's journey towards transcendence.
I think that's where I believe this brand got built.
I don't know. No. This is my thoughts subsequent to that. I would have never thought of it in that manner, that particular
and that's why I'm saying it's worth a little more. There's a saying that you can build a brand, you can build a brand logo or a business, but what a brand is what people decide for themselves. And I think that's how people have decided, because I'm going back to a CSK example. We as Indians, cricket fans, are so fickle. We react to losses and wins in very, very different ways. And CSK has gotten used to us to not get dejected with a loss so badly and not get overjoyed with the win so ecstatically. So even when there are bad years, people are not asking for the teams to be overhauled. Teams remain. You have minor changes, some fixes are done, they come back to winning ways. They lose, you're still fine. So people are still cheering as long as they got to get to see. Don't even when you lose.
But remember, CSK is also an identity.
Yes.
It's an identity that we're carrying. So the way I watch a match, and I'm very conscious about it, where I watch a match right now, is not to take sides but enjoy the cricket.
But how can you enjoy a sport without taking sides? It's only the artistry of it.
Because when you don't enjoy this, when you don't take sides, you can appreciate everything.
And I think that's exactly what the brand Sathyam brought out for people who went there, because the behavior of people who went to Sathyam Cinemas was elevated to a different plane than it was otherwise. I'm talk from personal experience. I talk from having watched my friends. I've been to see movies where people have torn seats and taken out the sponge and thrown it at screens.
Yeah.
I've seen them clean up seats at Sathyam Cinemas.
And I think hopefully, and so the question really then becomes, do all of us running businesses, are we hoping to create, institutions of change, institutions of transformation, and are nudging society to become better versions of themselves?
I think I can go on with this conversation. I want to talk more about the food there, but I'm going to end it because they're going to run out of battery again. I think this conversation, Kiran, has helped me not just look at how I see marketing, it's also kind of put a spanner in the works of seeing how businesses should be built. And I think that's the mission anyway. And this is a challenge and an eye-opener for listeners. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
And thank you for the patience. And I don't think I've had this a philosophical conversation about business.
Oh, confusing conversation. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
I'm good at doing that, confusing people.
Thank you so much.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Thank you.